All in Sports Network. We love sports.
The Kansas City Chiefs Friday injury report is in, and it did not get too much better from Thursday. We talk about the latest injuries heading into the final day of practice on Saturday, leading up to Monday Night Football against the Washington Commanders. Plus, Brashard Smith continues to get a lot of reps, but one NFL insider believes that it's going to be more snaps for him coming up with the current injury status of a Chiefs running back. We'll talk about that. And finally, on today's show here on the Chiefs Report, we'll talk about Coach Steve Spagnuola, the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, and what he said is the plan now that Omar Normal-Lott is officially out for the season on season-ending IR after tearing his ACL versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Jace Andrews here with you. Welcome into the Chiefs Report, everybody. Hope you're having a wonderful Friday wherever you might be. If you're listening to this on Saturday, hope you're having a great first day of your weekend as well. Chiefs news continues to roll in here, and on the Chiefs Report, we're making sure you're covered throughout the entirety of the season. Today, we got our final, or not our final, but our second to last injury report heading up to that Monday Night Football game. I say final because most of the time Friday practice is the last day, but because of the Monday Night Football game, the Chiefs will have practice tomorrow, meaning there will be one extra day for some of these players who did not participate that we'll talk about, that will have a chance to come at least be a limited participant and try and make their way onto what will hopefully be the game on Monday, but we'll talk about that through today's show. So without further ado, let's talk about today's Chiefs injury report and kind of go through what we see and all that comes with it. So we open it up here by kind of looking at a couple of different things, and you'll see here that you can look at Josh Simmons and know that he is a non-participant today as well. In fact, it was more intriguing to see that Simmons, or rather Simons, whatever you want to call him, he is still away from the team. And that's something that, well, you don't want to see, but at the same time, it's definitely something to take note of and look and watch for. So I don't think he's going to play. I really look at him and see that he's, one, not in the facility. Two, he hasn't been in the facility for over a week now. And according to Andy Reid's comments, he is dealing with a very serious family matter. The original report that that came out of Chiefs camp was that it was going to be somewhat of a mental health break. Right now, we don't know the full details. We don't really want to speculate. However, this is something that we're monitoring and seeing whether or not anything can change. And so, continuing on here in the Chiefs injury report, a couple of things of note. The first one being Kareem Hunt. He did not participate in yesterday's practice. He was a limited participant today. Another big injury from yesterday, a non-participant in practice, Trey Smith. He's also a non-participant in today's practice, still dealing with that back issue. Charles Omenihu, he was a full participant in both practices. However, he was listed on the injury report for ankle and abdomen issues. Same can be said for Christian Roland Wallace, who has a hand issue, and Brashard Smith, who was listed on here with a toe injury, but he was a full participant in both days. Jawan Taylor, knee and shoulder, the tackle for the Chiefs, full participant yesterday, full participant today. Jerry Tillery, a defensive lineman, going to need him in a very big role given the injury to Norman-Lott, which we'll talk about later on in the show. Full participant for Tillery in both yesterday and today. Does still have that elbow label on his injury. Jalen Watson, a quarterback, dealing with some back injuries. He was a limited participant yesterday. Today, good news, he is a full participant. Xavier Worthy listed with that shoulder and ankle injury. Since that first game, he's basically been on the injury report every single day, but full participants in both Thursday and Friday practices. So nothing too crazy to really note in a lot of different ways. So good news all around for the Kansas City Chiefs for a couple of different manners. But however, the bad news does come with the two non-participants, and of course the limited participant of Kareem Hunt. And that's kind of where I want to talk about in the last little bit of this injury report. So talking about Kareem Hunt, and I think there's a little bit that goes into this with Brashard Smith. We can kind of tell that he is going to be a intriguing part of this Kansas City Chiefs back half of their season for a couple of different reasons. The first one being Brashard Smith is looking like he's going to get more snaps, is looking like he's going to take a little bit more of a stronger grasp on that RB2. But Kareem Hunt is still a valuable piece to this Chiefs team. 53 carries, 205 yards, and he does have 3 touchdowns. Now, not a big receiving back. However, this year he does have 7 receptions for 55 yards. So a good thing to see in that light. One thing to also note with Kareem Hunt is, listen, this guy is 30 years old. And for a running back, that is something to note for a couple of different reasons. The first one being a running back's lifespan, I guess you could say, in the NFL averages about 10 years, and that's on the good side of things. So the fact is, he was drafted in 2017. He's a lot younger than some people think is. I mean, I think in my head, obviously with running backs, you look at Kareem Hunt and you look at a lot of older running backs and you expect them to be like 38, 35. Kareem Hunt is 30 years old. Like he's not some, retired old vet. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is 11 years older than Kareem Hunt. It's something to note. But does that mean that the injury is not going to be treated differently? No, they're going to treat it the same way, and they're going to treat it as if it was towards a older veteran because of the position that Kareem Hunt plays. However, we'll talk about it later on the show. Brashard Smith, because of this injury, I really do believe is going to get some more solid reps and is something to watch for as well. Do want to talk about Trey Smith for a second as well. Smith is such an integral piece of this Kansas City Chiefs offensive line. And when you're talking about this running back room, and it's been really a statement that we've constantly brought up for this entire week and has been a point of interest for the Kansas City Chiefs the entire season, given that Isaiah Pacheco has not played to what I would call the caliber they need him to. And so having your best offensive line out there, having your best lineman out there is such a huge part. And well, if the PFF grades are what you look at, his run blocking grade is a 61.5, which just ranks him 33rd out of 81 guards in all of the National Football League. But his pass blocking grade, an 81.2, that's 4th out of all 81 guards. And his overall grade of a 71.5 ranks him 13th amongst all guards in the NFL. And so when you look at Trey Smith, when you look at this Chiefs offensive line without him, I'm not going to say it's a scary thing. I'm not going to say like, oh, if they don't have Trey Smith, this offensive line is in a bad spot. Like, no, I trust the guys we had. The line has actually been really solid this season, which is something that you haven't been able to say in a couple of years in the past. Over obviously, they've done a lot of scouting, done a lot of guys getting them in the right places. We know Jawan Taylor and still kind of dealing with those penalties, but it's something that you want to have your best guard out there. You want to have your best offensive lineman out there in Trey Smith. I would have to say if we see him as a non-participant tomorrow, the most likely outcome is that he will not play. The age is obviously in a good spot for him when you're 26 years old as an offensive lineman. A lot of the times, if you have a limited participant on the last day of practice, you still have a shot to play. You still got that potential to go out there and compete at the highest level. But if you don't participate on that last day, if you are not able to have a single day of any participation in practice, that's a hard thing to do for any offensive lineman. Forget age, forget any intangibles that you want to talk about. When you don't have a practice, that's not going to go well for you. That's not going to work out for you. And in a lot of ways, it usually means you're not going to play. So for Trey Smith, we'll wait. We'll see if the injury report tomorrow has him as a limited participant, then we're going to be good to go. We're going to be fine. If tomorrow the injury report is do not participate or did not participate, I should say, I'm going to say he's not going to play. Monday Night Football is such a big deal, and the odds of him risking any sort of re-injury or making the injury worse, I don't see that happening, especially when the long-term goal of the Chiefs is not to beat the Washington Commanders. The long-term goal of the Chiefs is to reach an AFC championship, reach a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl in it this season. And that's obviously something that, well, for the Chiefs, they need Trey Smith. And they need all the guys they can get. So no reason to go out there and risk anything else. And if you kind of go back to that injury report, it's a back injury, which is an integral part of an offensive lineman. And even if there's just some discomfort, you don't really want to, first of all, risk it. Second of all, you don't want to have a guy. I think in a lot of ways, the NFL is so talented and such a high caliber level of play that you'd almost rather have a backup guy out there without a back injury than maybe one of the best offensive linemen in the league with a back injury for a couple of different reasons, just because of the way that offensive line position is so detrimental to the body and how much it really takes to play that offensive line role. So that is the Chiefs injury report. One kind of final time as we pull it up here and give you one final report. Josh Simons, he is a non-participant, or Josh Simmons, non-participant on Thursday and Friday, looking like he will not play this upcoming Monday. Kareem Hunt, limited participant today. Hopefully could be a full participant tomorrow. It'll be good to go. Trace Smith, non-participant. If he's limited tomorrow, there's a chance. Past that, Omenahue's on the port, but he's full participant. Christian Miller-Wallace, he's a full participant. Brashard Smith, he was a full participant. Jawan Taylor was a full participant. Jerry Tillery, a full participant in both days. Jalen Watson, a limited participant yesterday, full participant today. And then finally, Xavier Worthy, who was a full participant in both practices. He looks like he will be ready to go. Let's move on now to Brashard Smith, kind of talk about the outlook on him, because NFL.com themselves released an intriguing article to me, and I want to kind of pop it up here on the screen if you're watching, but otherwise I can kind of describe it to you if you're listening on Spotify or Apple. But Chiefs rookie running back Brashard Smith has, quote, made a ton of progress and could see snaps increase. Now, yesterday we talked about what Andy Reid had said about Brashard Smith and how they're going to use him, but I want to get the full quote just because it's such a high praise for Brashard Smith that I don't think it's being talked about enough. Here's what Andy Reid says, quote, he's done a nice job of picking it up. That position, you've got to know the pass game, the run game, and then you have these protections that you've got to take care of. They get a little crazy, the protections do, with all the different looks that defenses are throwing at you. Then also, as many protections as we have, different types of protections we have, he's hung right in there and done a good job. We've been able to give him a little more each week in different roles. We're moving him all over the place. I wouldn't see that part changing. We're going to keep utilizing his talents. He's a hard worker, and all of that, the intangible stuff, is great. Coach Reid has have very high praise for Brashard Smith, and rightfully so. I mean, you think about the past 2 weeks in which his receiving counts have gone so much up, and then this most recent week where he had 14 rushes on the ground as well. And I said this yesterday, but I think I need to reiterate in some aspects. The way that Coach Reid is talking about Brashard Smith, and I'm not going to say that Coach Reid is a hard man to please by any sort of the imagination. He's a very happy, fun-loving guy that wants to make sure his guys succeed and is always going to talk positive of them. But Brashard Smith, for being a guy who was drafted in the latter rounds, for a guy who wasn't expected to have this type of role, and in quite honesty, in some aspects could have easily been cut and put on the practice squad at this current point in time. But instead, they've liked the intangibles. He's been able to do exactly what you need to do when you're a later round pick, when you're fighting for a roster spot. And that's be able to be utilized in different situations. And that's what Andy Reid is praising in this quote. He's saying, listen, we can use him in a blocking scenario. We can use him in a receiving scenario. We can use him as a running back. And that's so intangible to having a guy like Brashard Smith increasing his snaps. And that's exactly what we've seen throughout the season. We saw him, start off not getting a lot. The Giants game had a couple of good plays, looking like, okay, maybe this guy's got something. And then, last week, real breakout game, came out onto the field, looked fantastic, and in a lot of ways impressed a lot of people. And so I'm going to take a break here, but I do want to come back, show you Brashard Smith's stats, talk about what we could see from him in the upcoming games, and so much more. So stick around. I'll be right back here on the Rogue Media Sports Network with the Chiefs Report.
Protect your car with 3W Liners all-weather floor mats. Made from durable materials like TPE and rubber, our mats are designed to withstand rain, snow, and mud with deep grooves to trap dirt and liquids. For a custom fit and advanced protection, visit 3W Liners. That's the number 3, WLINERS.com today. At 25 Home, our ultimate goal is to provide you with a transformative experience, making each day feel like it has an extra hour. We believe your home is more than just a space, it's a sanctuary where comfort, relaxation, and happiness thrive. Discover the difference at 25 Home today. Shop now at 25home.com.
I need to get real excited.
Sure.
Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Sheridan Vasquez, and this is Sheridan Soundcheck Sessions. And I will be interviewing some of your favorite musicians and maybe some you've never heard before. Join me on Sheridan Soundcheck Sessions for something new every time. You can find Sheridan Soundcheck Sessions anywhere you get your podcasts or at roguemediamusic.com. yeehaw.
Don't do yeehaw.
And keep the music playing.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's all we need.
Yeah.
Get paid faster with Bill, the easiest way to send, receive, and manage your payments. No more delays, no more hassle. Whether you're a freelancer or a business, Bill makes payments seamless and secure, simple, fast, and reliable. Sign up today at Bill.com. Want to turn your passion into profit? With Blogify, creating a blog has never been easier. Build, customize, and grow your site with powerful tools designed for beginners and pros alike. Start sharing your story today and watch your audience grow with Blogify. Visit blogify.ai today for a free 3-day trial. That's Blogify, Blogify.ai today. Overwhelmed by your inbox? Clean Email is here to help. Organize, clean, and manage your emails with powerful automation tools. Say goodbye to spam and clutter and enjoy a stress-free inbox. Try Clean Email today at cleanemail.com. That's CLEAN email.com. Stay connected no matter where you are with eSIM-X. Say goodbye to expensive roaming charges and physical SIM cards. With access to over 200 global carriers, we make mobile connectivity seamless and affordable for travelers worldwide. Join the future of communication today at esimx.com. That's ESIMX.com.
Farmhounds offers natural treats and chews made with quality products that support family farms, regenerative agriculture, and humane farming practices. Give your dog the best with wholesome, organic ingredients that promote health and happiness. Shop now at farmhounds.com.
Easy Sun has been living fearlessly under the sun since 2016. Born from sailors' need for convenient sun protection, our mineral sunscreen is crafted with natural ingredients offering broad spectrum protection against UVA and UVB rays. Safe for your skin and the environment, stay protected on the go with Easy Sun, your ultimate sun care solution. Visit EasySun.com today. That's EEZYSUN.com.
Welcome back here to the Chiefs Report. Jace Andrews talking with you. And we're talking about Brashard Smith. We're talking about kind of what we can see from the increased snap counts. And obviously, we just talked about the NFL article in which they expect to see a load increase for Brashard Smith. But what exactly does that look like, and kind of all things in between? So let's kind of talk about that here and go into it. So first off is first, we go to his game log and we can kind of see that the snap increase, yeah, maybe it's supposed to get more, but we really saw an increase last week. You talk about the 14 carries for 39 yards, 5 receptions for 42 yards. It is his best performance. Combined in that game, you're talking a total of over 70 yards. You're going to 81 yards of offense just from this 7th round rookie out of the university, or Southern Methodist University, I should say. And so what does a snap increase look like? How are the Chiefs able to get him on the field more? And what does that mean for the rest of the running back room? And that's what I want to talk about here for just a second, because we've mentioned so many times how the Chiefs are in a position to where if they make a trade for a top tier running back, you feel very confident about their ability to make a playoff run to the Super Bowl. But this is honestly one of the first years in maybe past 4 or 5 where it seems as though they almost have to make a trade. I mean, the 2023 season was an intriguing one, but you almost had sort of this calm confidence. Obviously, you lost that first game to the Lions. There was a couple of very unfortunate losses. You talk about the drops by Marquez Valdez-Scantling in that year, but you had kind of this calmness over your body, at least I did, that the team was going to be able to pull it out. The team was going to be able to get to the Super Bowl, and that's just what they did, and they went to overtime and won against the San Francisco 49ers. Last year, the 15-2 record, you think about all that transpired in that, and then this year, and the ugly start that you had, and the way this team just, it didn't look right, it didn't feel right. It felt like, I mean, I'm not going to say it, but I'll say it, the Chiefs dynasty they have built maybe this was the ending. Maybe this was the time where we saw the downfall and the decrease for Travis Kelce and for Chris Jones, and that Patrick Mahomes finally wasn't going to be able to carry this team enough. And then you get further on the season, you see the progress, and you're looking at that Jacksonville game thinking, great, and then it doesn't happen. Now you're sitting here. You just beat the Raiders 31-0, which I'd argue the Raiders right now are playing as the worst football team in the National Football League. So at least you're going to say you did what you needed to do. But the running back room is an intriguing part of this team and a big reason why I think that confidence might not be there. And I'm not saying they've had like a top tier running back over the past couple of years, but Pacheco has looked different this year than you could say the past 2 seasons. And he's not had the explosive runs that we've seen the past couple of seasons. And so when you talk about guys like Breece Hall on the trade block, or you talk about guys like, there was one time where you talk about Kenneth Walker, the potential to trade for him. I don't know what the Chiefs are going to want to do here because they have 3 solid running backs, and I include Brashard Smith in that. I think that you could look at any point in day and see Isaiah Pacheco go out there and perform well. You could go out there and you could look and you could see Kareem Hunt do some good things. You could also see Brashard Smith, Pacheco. I mentioned all 3 of these guys. They're in good spots to all perform to the top tier level they need them to be. But none of them are consistent. None of them are able to go out there and you know what you're going to get out of them. So for Brashard Smith, they want to get him more snaps. The expectation is for him to get more snaps. But what happens if the NFL trade deadline, which is on November 4th, so less than 2 weeks away, Brett Veach goes out and says, you know what? We're putting all our chips on the table. We're getting a star running back. We're getting Breece Hall. We're getting a Jalen Wright, Jerome Ford. I'd be really intrigued to see how this running back room looks at that point, and maybe more in depth how they intend to spread about the carries. And so I'm intrigued to see that. But we'll see what happens with Brashard Smith this week. I think it'll be a really telltale sign, first of all, of how healthy Kareem Hunt is, given the snap count that we see from Brashard Smith, along with what the expectation is for him moving forward, given the Monday Night Football contest and the game that he had in this most recent week. Talked a lot about the injuries in the early part of today's video, but one thing we did not talk about was Omar Norman-Lott, which, if you don't know, he tore his ACL in the Las Vegas Raiders game this past Sunday, and unfortunately, he will be out for the rest of the season, which is a pretty big blow given the draft pick you selected him with and the lack thereof of depth at the defensive interior lineman position. And so Coach Spagnuola kind of talked about this and really kind of looked at what the plan was post Omar Norman-Lott injury. So first, I do want to go to what Coach Spag said about Omar Norman-Lott and how bad this stings. He said, quote, "I was really disappointed to lose Omar. It's disappointing for him. He'll grind through it and we'll get him back next year. What he gave us was some juice inside. Now we won't have that." And so who exactly is supposed to set up? Well, in a lot of things that has been talked about, Coach Spagnuola, he said there is going to be a lot more pressure on the defensive end rotation, which is an intriguing thing given that Norman-Lott was an interior defensive lineman. But this is what I talked about when we had the first video post Norman-Lott injury. They might look to fill the entire defensive line, and that they might use some of the defensive edge rushers and put them in intriguing different slots. So the Chiefs run a 4-3, so they're going to have that 4 down lineman, but they might be able to, I'd say, use them in different aspects in different ways. So what does that mean? The pressure in the rotation. Well, you saw it there in that article, but the guy who is probably going to take the most on is Ashton Gialetti. And Gialetti, he's a pretty big piece of this team that hasn't been talked about. A 3rd-round pick out of Louisville this past season, and he hasn't really done too much all this year. He did come in for that Las Vegas Raiders game for a majority of the snaps, given obviously the injury. He recorded 2 tackles, both of them being assists. Nothing really stands off the board here. Nothing really takes any type of, oh, this guy's going to be fine. He had a half of stuff. I mean, there's some good things on that mark, but at the same time, he's not Omar Norman-Lott. He hasn't been in the rotation like Omar Norman-Lott has. And so we talk so much about, well, the running back room, and is that the room they're going to need to trade for? But in a lot of aspects, you have a plethora of decent or above average, we'll say, running backs where you like Pacheco, you like to have Brashard Smith, you like Kareem Hunt. But in the defensive line room, you like the guys that you have, there just aren't that many of them. I mean, you think about the entirety of your defensive line, you're talking a couple of guys like Jerry Tillery, who was on the injury report. You're talking Mike Dana. You're talking, of course, George Karlaftis. And we know, of course, about Chris Jones. But the good is there. The depth is not. And so that's why the move, when they placed Omar Norman-Lott officially on injured reserve and they pulled up a cornerback from the practice squad, was intriguing to me. And I think this week will be a telltale sign. And I've mentioned it in past reports when talking about the NFL trade deadline, that this is a huge week for a couple of different pieces because, yeah, you have another game. Yes, that Sunday is going to be huge as well. But that is going to be not even 48 hours before the NFL trade deadline commences. So you got to start looking at trades now. You got to start looking at trades at the end of this Sunday's game. And if Ashton Gillette can't go out there and perform the way that you want him to perform, then guess what? You're going to start looking at that defensive end position. You're going to start looking at that defensive line of position and say, okay, Gillette's a good one. George Gillette. I think that we could use him in some positive manners, but we need somebody else. We need somebody to come out and help. Who are the guys available? Well, I mean, there's not a lot of people that you can talk about and scream from the high mountaintops that he'd be great because, I mean, Trey Hendrickson was an option, but I don't think the Bengals would trade to you anyways, and it sounds like he's off the trading block. You look at a guy like Max Crosby, who actually might be on the trading block, but there's no way that they're going to trade, that the Raiders are going to trade you Max Crosby. It just doesn't happen. Inside the AFC, inside the division, not happening, especially for a guy who they just signed to a 3-year deal. So, yes, the defensive edge rushers that are out there, there were some good ones, but you're not going to get any of them. Interior defensive linemen, I mean, is Jeffrey Simons going to be available? I don't really know. Maybe you could look to a guy like Arden Key of the Tennessee Titans. Titans are in a really bad spot. Key has played okay. I just don't see anybody that you're going to get be like this great replacement, but that doesn't mean you don't need to get somebody. That doesn't mean that you have to just sit on your hands and be like, okay, well, guess we tried. No, you got to go out there. You got to get somebody because ultimately at this point, if you look at the depth chart, you're one injury away from looking at this from a different light. You're one injury away from looking at this Kansas City Chiefs, just entirety of their roster and thinking, man, a defensive interior line is in a tough spot. I mean, let's just go look at it real quick. Just to pull up how, like, I'm going to say loose that depth is. You talk about your defensive tackles. You have Chris Jones and Jerry Tillery and Derek Nottie. Those are your only 3 defensive tackles. The good news is you have defensive edge rushers, and they can go in and they can play the interior line, like Ashton Gillette. Mike Dana can go in, play the interior line if they need it. They also have Charles Omenihu, who I expect we'll see play in some intriguing roles in Malik Herring. But again, you're talking about a defensive interior line that effectively has only 3 players who are at their natural position in the interior. And past that, it's guys who you'd be forcing to play on the inside of the line that are notably better on the outside of the line. Now, desperate times call for desperate measures, but it doesn't need to be desperate. It doesn't need to be, oh, I guess we got to play Ashton Gillette. Guess we got to play Charles Omenihu on the inside. Guess we got to change up our defense to a different formation on the offensive line, or change basically having 3 edge rushers in some aspect and kind of move them out wide. You can go out and get somebody. And the point that I make here is that if you look at that depth chart, your starters are all fine. You've got Karlaftis, Jones, Nottie, Dana. You're good. The depth is there, and for a position that you have a long, sustained defensive drive that you're in there, you're going to need some bodies. You're going to need some guys to come in and play some key minutes, and you don't have that right now. So the final point I make is this: Brett Veach, you got to go out and make a move. Go out. It doesn't have to be some blockbuster trade. It doesn't have to be something that lights the world on fire. But what it does have to be is an interior defensive line. What it does have to be is helping out this team in a position that they are lacking depth in. The hope is that's the goal. I really do think, given the moves they've made, the way they've talked, that if they're able to survive this week, maybe they'll think about just saying, we're fine. But I really do see the biggest priority for them is getting some sort of depth on that interior defensive line. And we'll kind of talk about that and see what exactly happens throughout the week. But that's all we got for you here on today's edition of the Chiefs Report. Interesting game coming up on Monday. Lots of things to talk about. We'll have a post-game show, kind of talk about all of it when it does happen. But for now, that's all we got. We'll see you next time here on the show. Hope you have a great rest of your Friday or Saturday if you listen to us on Saturday. And yeah, have a great day. See you next time. Peace out, guys.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.